Hello and welcome to the Pineapple Support Mental Health Summit 2020, sponsored by Pornhub and Model Hub. My name is Leah Tannett. I am the founder and president of Pineapple Support, and your wonderful, gorgeous, fabulous host for the evening is Kelly.
Hi guys, I'm Kelly. I work for Pineapple as well.
Vice President in the UK. This summit is in memory of Dr. Amy Harwick. Dr. Amy Harwick tragically lost her life earlier this year in February. Amy was a therapist of Pineapple Support. She was a friend and an ally of the industry. She is and always will be missed by everyone who knew her. She was an incredible, beautiful person inside and out. And today we honor her memory and invite you to join us over the next 2 days. So for that reason, today we are going to be focusing, today and tomorrow, sorry, we're going to be focusing on issues around stalking, bullying, abuse, relationships, trauma, and anxiety. So of course, if any of you have suffered from any of these or for any reason need to speak to a therapist or counselor, please reach out and we can connect you. We also have trained volunteer listeners who are available 24/7. And equally, if you would like to donate, you can do that from the website. Also, every single dollar helps. It really, really does make a huge difference. So the website is pineapplesupport.org. Please go visit and support your performers, support your community, and let's all help care for each other. So with that said, I am now going to disappear into the background and be your techie.
I'm going to take the reins.
But first, let's welcome Eboni Gadson.
Hi,
Hi, Eboni.
honored to be here and excited to get to wake some of you all up, be part of some of you all's lunch hours, some of you all's dinner, as we talk about cyberbullying and stalking. So this can be a pretty intense topic, but it doesn't have to be. So first, I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, I gotta be a host. Give us a minute. Okay. And here we go. All right, so cyberbullying and stalking. So let's just get into it. This is what we're going to cover today, just to give you a quick little overview so you can know what to expect. We're going to get into some definitions. I always feel like it's really helpful to define what we mean by these terms, since language is so important, and to give some examples, because sometimes even with the definitions, it can be a little clinical or legal and not always make sense. So examples help us really understand them in a real world framework. And then we're going to do an activity. So that way we can practice applying these. I know I'm an experiential learner, so if any of you all are too, that will be helpful as well. And then we're going to talk about your rights, like what can I do about it if I find myself in these situations? And that's going to lead to the action steps, what to do if you are the victim of cyberbullying and stalking or the survivor of cyberbullying and stalking, and how you can overcome some of the things that happen as a result of that. So what is cyberbullying, right? The definition that I found says that it's the use of electronic communication to send messages of an intimidating or threatening nature. And I like this definition because I feel like it's all encompassing. It's really important, the electronic communication piece, because cyber, right? That's what really drives that point home. But also it has to convey something that threatens a person's emotional experience, their sense of safety, security in any way. So that's a lot of stuff that falls under that umbrella. And it can be pretty subjective, but it's just all about how it affects you and your life. So the number of people that report experiencing cyberbullying in general is 41%, which is way too high. Unfortunately, there aren't any statistics for cyberbullying in the sex work community, which, are we surprised? Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of grants or federal dollars allocated towards research in our industry. But from some of the very informal polls that I've done on my social media and colleagues of mine have done on their social media or even just within their practice, it's looking like this number is closer to 75% within the sex work community. And so I think that that number makes sense, right? Just given the very intimate nature of what we do. But it's too small of a sample size to really say, all right? So I do want to be upfront about that. So this is high. This is like almost 50%, almost half of the people. And this is just that report being harassed themselves online. So if we talk about how many people know someone, it's probably closer to 100%. So I think it makes sense to just look at a glossary of terms, because there's a lot of language here that a lot of people might not be familiar with when it comes to cyberbullying. Cyberbullying itself is a word that a lot of people don't know. So all of these things that come along with it, I think it makes sense to define and really get familiar with. So doxing is something that's, I think, is really common within the sex work community, but also within the therapist community, posting someone's personal info online without their consent. I mean, that is something that if we're talking about things of a threatening or intimidating nature, your privacy, your personal information like your address, your legal name, these are things that could cause a person to not feel safe or to just, I didn't give my consent for you to share that really personal information. And so that's a violation. Hacking. So we see that a lot of time on social media profiles. That's really common. Someone hacking someone's Instagram account, for example. But it's just gaining unauthorized access to data in a system. So you could hack someone's email, you could hack someone's webcam profile, you could hack anything. It's just getting in without their permission. Usually they end up posting on that person's behalf, and it's usually for the purpose of either destroying that account, like especially if you have a lot of followers, or ruining your fan base, or just causing you some upset. Mobbing is when there are multiple perpetrators in cyberbullying. So you see that a lot in comment sections. One person says something extremely negative and then a bunch of people hop on the bandwagon. So that's mobbing. And then trolling is just creating discord on the internet. You see that in comment sections a lot too. But I think that I see that also in chat rooms of, cam sessions, someone that just randomly says something that either has nothing to do with the performance or has creates some upset with the other users or customers. And so to say something really off topic might not seem super harmful, but if the purpose, especially for within this industry, if the purpose is to make money, that can be quite harmful because you're distracting from the entertainment. You're distracting from that person's art, what they're doing, what they're bringing to the table. So it's not fair. It's not right. All right, so I always like to do this whenever I'm going to get into a really sticky subject. And so we are going to talk about suicide briefly on this next slide. So I want to give an emotional activation notification for anyone that struggles with suicide or that suicide is a trigger. I don't really like that word, but if it is, I'm giving you a fair warning, okay? So very controversial, right? August Ames had some really controversial tweets back in 2017, and they really stemmed from her opinion about crossover performers. I won't get too much into what crossover performers are because that's not really the reason why I'm bringing her up, but definitely look into this. This is really important, especially for the work that I do with the LGBTQ+ community. This is something that within sex work is a huge pervasive topic. But she received a lot of backlash online for her comments that she made about a performance that she didn't want to do. And some of that backlash included someone telling her to swallow a cyanide pill, basically kill yourself. And so those are the kind of comments that constitute cyberbullying. She tweeted, fuck y'all on December 4th, and then she was found dead on December 5th. And it's hard to think that that's a coincidence. So I do want to say that there is a history of mental health struggles in her history. Friends and family have come out and said that since her passing. But I think that I chose this example because it shows that the perpetrators aren't always customers or viewers or fans. Sometimes it's from within our communities. Sometimes it's our own coworkers. And so no one's really excused from who can cyberbully who. Cyberbullying is really about the act. What is happening and how is it making you feel? Okay. So stalking. There's a slight difference between stalking and cyberbullying. And I think for me, for the sake of this presentation, the difference is that stalking tends to happen in person. Now, when we get into legal stuff later, I'm gonna clarify that there is no distinction in legal grounds, okay? And I'll talk about why. But this definition, to pursue or approach stealthily, I mean, I struggle with this definition a bit because sometimes there's nothing stealthy about it. Sometimes it's quite aggressive, right? And anyone that's been stalked can understand what I'm communicating here. But I chose this definition because of the words pursue or approach. I think the feeling of like, you know, that song, somebody's watching me, like that is the sense of insecurity you have when someone's stalking you. And so that I feel like this definition kind of communicated. But so let's get into some examples to really flesh this out, because I think that especially for this word, that really fleshes it out. Physical proximity, like how I was saying. So if you're being followed or someone's laying in wait for you, like behind the bushes, that's a common example, or literally at your house or near your house or at your job. If you have a scene coming up and they're somewhere near your scene, if they're at the club that you work at. I mean, there's a lot of ways that someone could physically proximity stalk you. Visual proximity, let me just move my little window here. Visual proximity, watching or recording someone without their consent. So that can happen a lot of times, even in webcam scenarios, if someone is screenshotting and they don't have your permission, especially if they're not paying for it. Fuck that. That is not, first of all, consent, because they don't have your consent to do that. But also if they're doing it and then like sending you pictures of yourself, that's a common stalker move, because it's done to cause you upset. It's done to make your sense of security untethered. And so like that counts as stalking. Unwanted items, so unsolicited gifts, a lot of times that's how they'll frame it, like I got you a present, but you didn't ask for it. And it can range from something seemingly romantic, like sex toys, which isn't uncommon for sex workers to receive, to things that are bizarre, like teeth, right? That's really unsettling to get something like that. But even if you get something like sex toys or panties, but let's say it's from a former client that you cut off because they don't have good boundaries and they keep sending it to you, even though that's something fairly normal for your industry or what you might accept from your clients, even if you have like a wish list or an OnlyFans page and you promote receiving these kind of items in exchange for whatever, that's still, it still can be grounds for stalking if you don't ask for it, especially if you ask them to stop and they keep going and it makes you uncomfortable. The key in all this is that it makes you uncomfortable. The emotional distress piece is really important. And I'm sure in the next webinar where they get more in depth on legal, they'll define that more, or you can ask that, like, what constitutes emotional distress? Because it's a lot of things. And pretty much if you can go to your therapist, like I write letters of support for my clients all the time, just to kind of like back them up with a professional stamp of like, this person has anxiety or this person has PTSD, and it's a result of these events. So essentially that will hold up in a court of law. Vandalism. This one I think is the least thought of, and it's really common and important. I think a lot of people don't file reports about this type of stalking, but they need to. So damaging or threatening to damage someone's property, and that can include theft, because essentially if you're taking something away from someone's property, that's damaging it. They want that thing there. I think a common one that I hear of from the sex workers I work with is people like stealing panties from them, or stealing anything that they might use in their work, like a strap-on or floggers or anything like that. That still counts as stalking, because essentially the goal is to still cause you to not feel safe, cause you to, especially if they want you to know that I took it. A lot of times stalkers will do things like take one of your panties one by one until you realize, like, I'm out of panties. And that's how you'll have that all of a sudden, like, lack of safety and that hypervigilance that comes with PTSD. And that's control for them. And that's why it's really a sickness and it's a crime, because it's so premeditated. All right. So another emotional activation notification. So this one is not suicide, but we are going to talk about homicide. And it's important. And I've thought about whether or not I should include this on this slide, but I felt like because this summit is in honor of Dr. Amy Harwick, it's kind of ridiculous not to, and especially since we're starting with cyberbullying and stalking, and she, really dealt with both. I think that it makes sense to talk about it. So this is what we're getting into. She had an ex-boyfriend, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him power, who turned into a stalker. I put stalker in parentheses because those were her words. A friend commented in an article that I believe I got from Rolling Stone. All the references will be later at the end of this presentation. That said that she referred to him as a stalker after she obtained her restraining orders in 2011 and 2012. So that's really drives this point home of what this looks like and how this can end, unfortunately, right? She experienced cyberbullying since the restraining orders when he, it's hard to say who the author was. And I think that's what I think the point of cyberbullying is. A lot of times it's difficult to track the source or to know where it comes from, but it causes such distress. And so some of the comments that she received were just like, I think one of them was written on a gossip blog. Yeah, it was just like a cruel online post. I don't really remember what they said, but obviously that's still an example of cyberbullying, just to write something negative, inherently negative and cruel about a person that causes them the emotional distress. And so she, I think, suspected that it was her ex or someone else that, she had bad blood with, but still, this is quite a lot. And considering the fact that she already had a restraining order against this guy, it's already sounding like a bad, bad story. So he basically heckled her on the red carpet at XBiz in 2020. And this is nearly a decade after this restraining order scenario. And so I put that in there just to give you an idea of the persistence of stalkers and how it's really a mental illness that one needs to be treated, but also intervention is so fucking important. Like, had law enforcement not been so, and I don't want to be blaming, but had they been a little bit more proactive, I really feel that more could have been done to protect Dr. Harwick. Even at the conference itself, like, security did nothing, and he approached her multiple times. And I think from what people reported, it looked hostile. So I think that that's really, really sad. And so then I forget the timing of the XBiz conference. I believe that was in January, if I'm not mistaken. I could be lying. But Valentine's Day, she was unfortunately murdered. He pushed her off the balcony, and he was charged with murder, burglary, and lying in wait. And if you remember, lying in wait and burglary are also part of that vandalism piece and the physical proximity piece of stalking. So this is like cyberbullying, stalking, all of the things. And it's a very close to home example. And so I felt like it was important to really have it sit with us and hold space for the fact that, wow, this is really important for us to be vigilant about and to be arming ourselves with knowledge and resources to combat. So let's play a game. I want to give you a scenario, and depending on, I'm not sure how we'll be able to do this because I can't see the chat box or anything from where I am. But I want to see if we think this is cyberbullying, stalking, both, or neither. So someone you went to high school with has found your performer profile and threatens to expose your profession on your personal account. What do we think that is? Do we think that's cyberbullying, stalking, both, neither? I'll give it a couple minutes and then I'll just say. All right. So this one I put as cyberbullying. And it looks like, you know, I think a lot of people would agree that this is cyberbullying. Because it's your performer profile, that's most likely online. You don't have a profile in real life, right? And if they threaten to expose it on your personal account, I'm assuming that personal account exists online as well. So that definitely counts as cyberbullying. I wouldn't say that it's neither because it's a threat. It's literally a threat. So anything that's threatening or intimidating counts as cyberbullying. All right, here's another example. A former client has somehow obtained your home address and continuously leaves sex toys in your mailbox as gifts, even though you didn't ask for them. I think this one's kind of obvious because I almost spoiled it earlier. So this one is definitely stalking because this is very in person. You could argue that it's both though, because how did they obtain your home address? So there could be a bit of digging going on there where, you know, they go online to, unfortunately, your address is public information. And I don't know if many people know and understand that. I think even for me as a therapist, that's pretty unsettling. And I'm hoping that we can bring some reform around the law about that. Because I think that when we work in such intimate industries, it's important to feel that home is really a refuge and that you're protected. So yeah, you didn't ask for those. So it's harassment, it's stalking. All right, let's say you're a webcam model and every time you go live, there's a user in the chat posting about their political views that makes other users want to leave the chat room. I'd be pissed because now I'm losing money. Is that cyberbullying, stalking, both, or neither? Yeah, so this is definitely cyberbullying because it's on the webcam, right? And it's causing you to lose money. So that's definitely a threat. You could even argue that you're losing money and sue for lost wages, but also it's causing you distress. It's intimidating even if your political views are such that cause other people to feel that their life or health or whatever is in danger. So that definitely is cyberbullying. I don't know that you could really argue, definitely an asshole. I don't know that you could argue that it's both, but it's definitely hardcore cyberbullying. All right, so our last little scenario. I love this photo. This is a photo that pops up in my mind when I think of stalking, by the way. But anyway, for the past few months, you have been receiving random photos of yourself running errands that you don't remember taking or posing for. What do we think of that? Cyberbullying, stalking, both, or neither? Getting a lot. Stalker. I agree. So I think this is definitely that visual proximity part of stalker, but we don't know how we've been receiving the photos. So if they're DMing them to us or texting them to us or emailing them to us, then that could also constitute a cyberbullying too. So I want to say that, in us doing this activity, it was really just for the learning experience of deciphering between cyberbullying and stalking. But in the eyes of the law, which is actually a good thing, it's all under the umbrella of stalking, because the way that the law defines stalking, it understands that that can be done through the use of electronic means. So it's all lumped under the same, if that makes sense, okay? So that's great. That means that they're not going to negate or think that it's not as harmful or as serious if it happens on Instagram Live. No, they're gonna be like, no, that doesn't fly with us. So you have some protection there. So what can I do if I'm ever cyberbullied? Well, you have more options than you realize. This is my favorite part. Screenshot that shit, always and forever. And this is even what I tell my adolescent clients, because cyberbullying is so pervasive in that age group. But screenshot it, keep your receipts. You need to have evidence and a way to force accountability, especially if you're going to pursue legal action. Any attorney of law will tell you, like, the more that you can prove, the better your case. And unfortunately, as cold as that might seem, it's just the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you, because I want you to be able to win. I want you to be able to get justice. And this is going to be one of the main things that gets you that. So screenshot that shit. Okay. I have a lot of clients that when they get really distressing things, they feel like, oh, I don't want to hold on to it. I don't want to give it power. I respect that. So if you need to put it in a file cabinet, print it out, put it somewhere, or create a password protected file on your phone or your iPad or your computer, to put it somewhere where you don't have to constantly interact with it, that's fine to do for your mental health, but don't do it at the expense of not having your receipts, your evidence, okay? Don't retaliate. Okay, I know it's tempting to retaliate. There's even a movie out now, I forget what it's called, where this woman's literally like baiting people in to see if they're going to like attack her. Don't do that. It's an interesting idea. I think it's a great plot for a movie, but ultimately it could really put you in harm's way, especially if you aren't trained and skilled and know what you're actually doing. That could be a very dangerous situation. And I even mean that for cyberbullying. So when you like clap back, that can feel really empowering, but if you're clapping back in a way where you're then cyberbullying back, two wrongs don't make a right, and you potentially could face legal ramifications as well. So don't like put yourself in hot water, when this person is already in trouble. Just like let them be in trouble and you come out on this good side of justice. Be an upstander. I like this word. I never heard this word before, but it's the opposite of being a bystander. So we all have to do our part to change the culture. I think, especially in the case of like the August Ames situation, if more people on Twitter had, especially when the person said about like, you should swallow a cyanide pill. If more people had been like, hey, that's really not cool. Like, I get that what she said is fucked up, but like, don't tell someone to kill themselves. Then maybe, it's hard to say that, but like, we all just really need to band together and just not condone cyberbullying. Like, it's never okay, no matter what someone does. Check in with your boundaries. So you're the performer, you're the entertainment, you're the show. You control this shit. You decide what you share and what people have access to about you. I watched this stripper on YouTube, and I remember when she posted, or she didn't post, but like she included her boyfriend in a video, and the comments of that video, they're usually really positive, but this particular one were so negative, and people were just dragging him for various reasons. Some people thought he was ugly, some people thought he was broke, some people just were like, you're with a stripper, why? The usual ignorance. And so then after that, she stopped putting him on her page. And I was like, yes, good for you, because you have the right to your boundaries, what you share. If people aren't respecting your boundaries, then you have the right to change those boundaries. So this isn't intended to sound like blaming language at all, or to sound like, oh, if you hadn't shared so much, this wouldn't have happened to you, because we know that's not fucking true. People that walk around in burlap sacks can be, accosted. But at the end of the day, if you're feeling really unsafe and you feel that it would be empowering for you to switch up and have some power over what you share and change some of that narrative, then do that by all means. Oh no, I think I might have a stalker. And I'm sure you wouldn't be smiling like that if you did. But here's what you can do to feel safer. So again, just like even if it's happening online, if it's happening in person, you definitely want to keep as much of a record as you can. And I'm not going to lie, it can be harder to do in person because, that goes back to that definition of it being stealthy. Sometimes because of the criminal nature of stalkers, they can be really good at covering up their tracks. And so this like evidence piece is more difficult to maybe navigate than someone that leaves a electronic or paper trail. And so this still will be helpful if you pursue legal action. So even if you can, like say there's someone in a car waiting outside your house, if you have security camera footage, like I would recommend everyone get some kind of security video. I think that that's just wise to do in these days and times, because that will automatically create documentation for you where you don't have to have that hypervigilance of like, oh, is someone watching me? Let me like take a video. Like, no, you don't have to live like that. But if you do see something, being able to take a picture of it or recording, even with just voice, just with audio, that can really be helpful. If you get a voicemail from an ex or a former client or anyone, even if you don't know if it's anonymous, save that. That holds up in a court of law. I've had clients and personal friends of mine be granted restraining orders just from voicemails. So that's helpful. Navigating physical safety can be really hard because we all have different bodies and our bodies hold trauma. Our bodies keep the score, as Bessel van der Kolk says. And it's true. And so we need to do a lot in order for our body to be able to not do this and to do this, to relax, to feel settled, to let home be home, to let work even feel comfortable, especially when you work with your body. You have to be able to have that peace within it. So that could look like self-defense classes. I think a lot of people think that that's really on the nose, but I think it's more helpful for reasons than you think. If you're ever in a situation where you're being confronted physically by someone, you may not really know how you're going to respond. And so what self-defense class does is literally take the unknown out of anxiety and create some knowledge around what would I do in this situation? If someone was going like this, what would my body then do? And so that's really powerful. That really helps you. That literally counters anxiety, which is a natural like fight, flight, or freeze response. And that's great. So in addition to that, any kind of vigilance tips, I'm just trying to think of some off the top of my head. Locking your car door as soon as you get into it. That's something that even when I was a bartender at Starlets, they taught us. Like when you go home, you get in the car and you lock your door. Just, you know, make sure that you're not subjecting yourself to a vulnerable situation. And again, that doesn't mean that you're protected or that if you didn't lock your door and something happened, that it's your fault. Because ultimately, people shouldn't fucking stalk you. But all of that stuff could help you just feel safer, even after something happens. So let's say you've had an experience like this before and you're trying to get back to work, you're trying to just live your life again. These things can help you navigate safety and get back into the world, feel normal again. And somatic exercises. So I'm a sex therapist. I also specialize in trauma and anxiety. I love somatic work. I love doing breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, anything that connects your mind to your body, because they're inherently connected. They're always informing and communicating each other. Sometimes they're not, but that's the importance of doing somatic exercises. And if anyone really wants to know more about that or wants, you know, some resources, feel free to email me. I'll put my contact info at the end, and I will be happy to just share those with you, share my favorite even YouTube videos, because I just think it's so powerful. And talk about it. Tell your therapist, tell your homegirl, your homeboy, tell your family, tell someone you trust. Tell management, tell a coworker, tell security, tell your bouncer, tell whoever you think is going to listen, and either just hold space for you, do something about it, or allow you to navigate these other safety tips. So then the last thing are legal options. And we'll get into that. Also, the following webinar will really dig into that. So if you feel like legal is going to help you feel the most safe, then definitely stick around for that. So the very first thing I put was the Kink Aware Professionals Directory, because I really fuck with them. I think that they are great for putting this out there, especially for sex workers needing to be able to navigate, especially if you do illegal forms of sex work. You need to be able to talk to an attorney that's, one, not going to judge you, because that's annoying, but also that you can speak to freely. Because if you're in a legal jam or you need to pursue legal action, you want someone that can literally hear the story as is and know a legitimate defense for you. So that way the other side can't, like, you know, come out with something that you didn't share with your attorney because you were embarrassed or you thought it would get you in trouble, and then it ends up countering against you, right? So you can go on this exact website and you can do advanced search, and just for specifically attorneys, you could even search for your location, your area. I believe right now it's just US, but this is still a great resource. And I think that if you contact them, you can find like global options. And so that's really great. There's federal and state law for stalking. So remember what I said about stalking and cyberbullying? The law really doesn't differentiate the two, but everything's encompassed by stalking. So that's great. But it must be interstate in order for it to be federal. Otherwise, you have to look up each individual state law. So if it's online, that's automatically federal because it's just in web space. It's probably international, really. But if it crosses state lines, so let's say, for example, I work at a strip club in New York City, but I live in New Jersey, common example. And someone from the club follows me home. And so that's definitely stalking. That would count as federal, okay? Because they cross state lines in order to pursue the criminal act. The U.S. first Ossinger or Ossinger, I honestly don't know how to pronounce that because I've only read it. This court decision is important because it negated freedom of speech being used to being used as a defense for cyberbullying. So I think a lot of people hide behind that, like freedom of speech. I can say what I want. You can't. It's my First Amendment right. No, that's canceled. You can't do that. And the reason behind that, the reason why they canceled that, is because they said like communication is one of the main parts of the stalking crime. So you can't hide behind freedom of speech when that's, you know, integral to the criminal act. So the fact that there's a precedent in law for this already, where it's like, no, this doesn't work, you can't do that. That's great for, you know, survivors, because that means that when you try to pursue legal action, your defendant can't use this as a defense. They'd either have to use insanity, which they'd still be locked away, or some other defense. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but they can't use this. And then advocate for decriminalization. If we really band together and advocate for the decriminalization of sex work, especially all forms of sex work, this will allow sex workers to report incidents to law enforcement without the fear of imprisonment, because that's really why a lot of this stuff goes unchecked. If you're doing, even if you do legal forms of sex work, like let's say you're a stripper, but there's a back room, like there's always a situation that might be kind of sticky where it's like, that's really important to the case, but I can't share that because I'm afraid it's going to come back against me. And so that's really not fair when it comes to protecting yourself and being able to have rights and protections. So if we could just, you know, have some laws that back us up, then that would allow us to have, and people wouldn't feel as bold to cyberbully, to stalk, to rape, to any of the crimes that are committed against our community on a regular basis. They wouldn't feel so bold to do that because they know that we could go to law enforcement just like any other citizen. And then you could also contact your service provider. So phone harassment is illegal. You can call AT&T, you can call Verizon, you could call whoever you're contracted with and say, this phone number is harassing me. And they can look it up because they can see everything. And they will, I don't know if they will stop that person because it depends on who their provider is, but they can stop them from contacting you. So I don't know if they'll like drop them from the plan, but they'll stop them from contacting you. And unfortunately, I've experienced this even with like clients, like therapy clients. And so I know if I can do it for just that kind of a situation, then you can do it for someone stalking you or bullying you online. All right, and these are my references. So you know that I didn't just pull that out of my ass. And I just wanted to share all this information with you about my practice, my contact info, so that if you have any questions or you want copies of this presentation, in case you felt any of this info was helpful, then you have it. But otherwise, I'm really grateful for this time. And thank you so much for just allowing me to present to you all and to be here. And so I'm just going to navigate technical stuff while I'm trying to wrap up. And yeah, thank you.